Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be all about face primers and powders. I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on every single product in this drawer and share my top favorites, the things that I reach for every single day, and then also declutter the products that I'm not using super regularly or products that I've enjoyed in the past but maybe found a replacement for. I will say over the past year, primers and powders haven't been a big focus for me when it comes to new products. I feel like brands weren't launching a ton of new products in either category, and I was pretty content with my collection as a whole. So I don't know that I have a ton to declutter, but that being said, there are still products that I've either grown out of that I'm no longer loving or things that I've found a replacement for that I like a little bit better. So I will be decluttering some, passing them along to friends and family. If it is a product that's gently used, I will send it to Project Beauty Share. I think they do take products that come in like these squeeze tube type of packaging versus things that have like a doe foot and a screw-on cap. I was reading through the restrictions online and I think they updated it fairly recently. But anyway, let's get into it and I'll share reviews and my thoughts on everything. Okay, let's start with primers. So I kind of have this split into two different sections. Up here, I have either hydrating or sticky primers that lock your makeup into place. And then down here, I have smoothing or mattifying primers. So no matter what type of skin you have or what you look for in a primer, I really think I'll have one that you'll enjoy. Okay, so let's start with one of my favorite primers of all time, the Cali Ray So Blown Clean Blurring Primer. I actually don't have a ton of high-end primers. I feel like in general, it is a category the drugstore does really well. And for whatever reason, as I test out primers, a lot of my go-tos end up being from the drugstore, but this is a high-end primer I swear by. I just repurchased it fairly recently. It is so beautiful on the skin. It's very, very smoothing. If you have large pores, this is going to kind of fill them in, but it also just helps makeup glide over texture. It does feel moisturizing on the skin, but not overly so. It definitely doesn't feel like a lot of the primers in this section right here. I really think whether you have dry skin or oily skin, this could be a great option for you if you have large pores or texture or you just like a very, very smooth look. So I am going to keep this one. Another great smoothing primer is this one from e.l.f. This is the Liquid Poreless Putty Primer. This one is more mattifying than the Cali Ray one. So if you have oily skin, you might like this one a little bit better. The textures are different. The Cali Ray one is a little bit thicker, whereas this one is kind of liquidy. I actually like that because I feel like it just blends into the skin really, really well. I think people have said this is a dupe for a Tatcha primer, which I personally haven't tried, but this just gives your skin a very smooth, very matte finish. I think I can actually go ahead and declutter this version. I haven't used it ever since e.l.f. launched the liquid version. I just find the liquid version a lot easier to apply. This definitely has like a very smooth, creamy feel, so it's not hard to work into the skin by any means. Typically, when I do use this product, I like the matte version better. And the matte version is nice, but it's not quite as easy to blend into the skin as the liquid version. Like the liquid version just melts into the skin in the most perfect way. And I do feel like they have a very similar effect, but personally, I like the liquid one better. So because of that, I think I can actually declutter both of these. So I am going to keep both of the Power Grip primers as well. I mean, you can pretty much use these interchangeably. I personally like the pink one just a little bit better. It has niacinamide in it, and my skin does like niacinamide, but I also feel like this one just looks extra smooth. Like when I wear foundation, again, if I was to wear these side by side, my makeup would look almost identical, but there would just be like an extra smooth finish on the side where I use this. But sometimes I like this one too. I don't know. I like to have them both on hand because I do feel like in the winter time, or if I'm using a foundation that's maybe like already very smoothing, I might reach for this. I don't know. This is a primer that I do finish up and repurchase regularly. So sometimes if I use up the pink one, I'll just finish up the blue one before repurchasing the pink one. And I kind of go back and forth. They're both great options. You don't need both, but because I have them both, I am going to keep them. Actually, one more primer from e.l.f. I got a comment on a YouTube short that was like, you say every e.l.f. primer is your favorite. And I only had two until now, but I can't help it. e.l.f. makes really good primers. The Power Grip is my favorite on days where I want like a nice hydrated feel and a sticky grip. And then the Liquid Poreless Putty Primer is my favorite on days where I want a matte finish. But I recently tried this one again. It's the Jelly Pop Dew Primer. And I almost think I like it a little bit better than the Power Grip. It gives a very, very, very similar effect, but this one's just a little bit thinner, so it's actually easier to blend into the skin. And again, I feel like it maybe just looks slightly glowier than the Power Grip. This one is limited edition. It's been around for a little while, like the entire summer. I don't know when they're going to pull it from their website, but that's why I'm going to keep this one and the Power Grip. I'll continue to use it for sure, but usually they bring it back like every summer. So it isn't like a true limited edition product, but I feel like at some point they're going to stop bringing it back or make it permanent. Either way, I think they're both great options. If you can't get your hands on this, the Power Grip's still a really nice one. I think I am going to declutter the NYX Hydra Touch Primer. So I have a lot of primers that are very, very similar to this. Let me just pull them out. When I think of the NYX Hydra Touch Primer, I think of all 4 of these, and I really don't need to keep all 4 of them. I am going to keep the hard candy one because I talk about this one a lot on my channel. It is a slightly gripping primer, but it's also incredibly hydrating. I feel like it kind of falls between the Smashbox Primerizer and the e.l.f. Power Grip. It's not anywhere near as sticky as the Power Grip, but it is a little bit sticky. Like, it just provides a light grip to the skin. So I like to use this one. I also like to mention it on my channel when I'm sharing recommendations. So I am going to hang on to this one. And then I have the Smashbox Primerizer, which I love as well. I haven't been using this one a ton lately. I feel like usually when I do want a hydrating primer, I want something that has a little bit of a grip to it. And that wasn't always the case. So you know what? I think I can actually declutter this one. If you have very, very dry skin and you like basically a serum, I'll show you the texture of this, basically like a serum like product that just kind of hydrates and refreshes the skin, this is a nice option. Smashbox primers are some of my favorite, but they are expensive. So I do feel like there are alternatives out there if you don't want to spend the money on this, but I've been repurchasing this for years. They updated the packaging maybe like a year or 2 ago, and I've always really loved it. But again, I just don't know that it is like a true must-have for me when I have hydrating primers that also lock my makeup into place. It's kind of the same thing with the NYX Hydra Touch Primer. I feel like this basically does the same thing. Oh, wow. That is actually a little bit runnier than I remember. This is a good alternative if you don't want to spend the money on the Smashbox primer because, again, very light, very hydrating, just nice and refreshing. So it's not really going to extend the wear of your makeup, but if you have incredibly dry skin and you need that extra boost of moisture, this is a good option. And then I think I'm actually going to declutter this one from Essence as well. And the reason is because I do kind of use these two interchangeably. They have slightly different purposes. They do have some different ingredients, but I find that they basically do the same thing in terms of priming the skin. So on the right is the Hello Good Stuff Primer Serum. It's supposed to hydrate and plump. And then on the left is the Glow Serum Primer. So that one is supposed to hydrate and smooth. Honestly, there aren't big differences between the two. The blue one smells like blueberries. The pink one smells like watermelon. A lot of people say the pink one is a good alternative to the Glow Recipe Dewdrops. I don't find it to be the exact same, but I think it's like $6. So if you want something that leaves your skin, again, very glowy, very hydrated, I do think it is a really good alternative. And I'm going to hang on to this one and declutter this one because they're similar enough. I don't need both. I have this product from Catrice. This is a product that I just cannot make my mind up about. Like, it's fine, but I don't know that it is anything special enough that I really need to keep it on hand. It's called the Smoother. It's their Plumping Primer Concentrate. They say it plumps up the skin. It kind of like evens out wrinkles. It definitely doesn't do that. I feel like it's fine as a primer. Again, very moisturizing. It feels okay. It's lightweight. It doesn't break up my makeup, but it's not like a standout formula. I don't see a big difference when I use this. And I am a primer person. Some people are like, I'm not a primer person. I don't get the hype. I don't think it makes a big difference. I couldn't be more opposite. I love a good primer, and I feel like it can make a big difference in the way my makeup applies, the way it looks and sits on my skin, and the way it lasts throughout the day. So if I don't see that it does anything in all or any of those categories, I really don't need it. Okay, this one is from NYX. It's their Plump Right Back. It's meant to be a plumping serum and primer all in one. This really does make your skin look very, very smooth, but it doesn't have the typical smooth feel a lot of smoothing primers do. It's very hydrating, and then once it dries down, there's almost like a slight grip to it. So I feel like this is kind of like the best of both worlds, or like it encompasses everything that I look for in a primer. It is smoothing, it is hydrating, and then it's slightly gripping as well. So I feel like this is a nice option if I want a less intense version of the e.l.f. Power Grip. It's pretty expensive for a drugstore primer. I've had mine for a really long time, and I've made a really good dent in it. I only have this much left. I think I probably will end up finishing it up at some point. It's kind of one that I reach for in like the fall and the winter when I want something a little bit more hydrating, but maybe not as intense as e.l.f. I did repurchase this back in the winter. It's the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Primer. So I was really loving the Power Grip, and I was like, let me just try this again and see if it's worth the money. I do really like this. I feel like I get basically the same effect. So I don't think you need this and the Power Grip. I think the Power Grip is a really good alternative. It's not an identical dupe because the textures are different. Like this one's a little bit thinner. This almost has a little bit of just like a light gel texture, whereas the Power Grip, it's like a thicker gel. So I actually find this one blends into the skin a lot easier than the Power Grip. It's different, but I feel like the Power Grip actually does a better job of locking my makeup into place. So again, if you want like a sticky, tacky primer, but something a little bit less intense than e.l.f., this could be a good option. Last primer in this section is from Makeup Revolution. I don't know if they still make this. Let me just check. I feel like last time I went to link it on Ulta's website, it wasn't there. I actually don't see it online anywhere. So it does look like they fully discontinued it. So I'm definitely hanging on to mine. It is an under eye primer, which I mean, really you could use probably most formulas under your eyes, depending on how sensitive your skin is. But there's something about this formula that is really, really good. It's very light, very smoothing. So I like to apply this before I go in with concealer, if I remember. Okay, I have a couple of primers from Flower Beauty. So this one is the Skin Smoothie Radiant Glow Primer, which I really, really like. I'm kind of wondering if I need this product in my collection because I do feel like instead of this, I'll reach for something like the e.l.f. Halo Glow. If you like the idea of a glowy face primer, but you don't want something like the e.l.f. Halo Glow because maybe it has a little bit too much pigment, you just want something kind of natural, this is such a good option. But I also feel like if I'm not using this, my sunscreen typically gives a very similar look. I love the Heimish Artless Glow Base, and I feel like it looks almost identical on the skin, and it feels very similar. I don't know, I feel like at this point, I don't really need it in my collection just because I have other products that do something similar. So I'll pass this product along because there's still a lot left in here. I have this product from Flower Beauty, which it's pretty much brand new to me. I haven't even worn it with foundation yet, so I'm not even going to share any thoughts on this. I'm not going to declutter it, but it is the Power Matte Primer. I know I just said I'm not going to share any thoughts on this, but I do have initial thoughts based on when I swatched it. It doesn't feel like a typical matte primer. Like I'm not really sure this is going to mattify my skin. I mean, it does make my hand look matte and it does make my hand look smooth. It's a very creamy formula. So maybe it will be a good option on days where I don't want like an incredibly matte formula. We'll have to see. I actually have to wear it with primer, but because it's brand new, I'm obviously not going to declutter it. So in this section, I do have a lot of other very, very smoothing primers as well. This one is from e.l.f. It was actually part of a limited edition collection called Good Vibes Only, which I thought this collection was so much fun. I still have the eyeshadow quads from it, but this soft velvet primer is really nice. I kind of thought maybe they were testing it out and then they would end up launching like a permanent version of it, but I haven't seen that yet. It's a clear primer and it basically just leaves your skin looking incredibly smooth. Like if you have large pores, this is going to be, well, I'm saying all of this, but it's not even around anymore. If they end up bringing it back, I'll keep you posted, but see how it just like completely smoothed out my skin? I do like this product, but I never really use it or talk about it because it doesn't exist anymore. And I know sometimes when you're watching declutter videos, it's annoying how people just declutter limited edition products, and I don't always do that. But the truth is, since I do film beauty videos as my job, anything I'm wearing day to day, like even when I'm not on camera, I'm thinking about how I want to incorporate it into a video, how I want to review it. So inevitably, if there is something in my collection that's been discontinued, unless it is like a top holy grail staple, I don't usually end up wearing it as much because I'm either testing something else out or using something that I can actually share as a recommendation with you in case you want to try it out. So that is a really, really good primer, but I'm actually going to pass it along because I do have a few other formulas that I find to be kind of similar, including this one from KVD Beauty. This one is the Pore Refining Primer. This is a high-end alternative, so it's obviously more expensive, and I don't usually like to recommend a high-end alternative instead of a drugstore product just because I feel like, I don't know, I wouldn't want to spend like 4 or 5 times the price if I didn't have to, but this is very, very close. Again, it just kind of smooths out the skin, creates a nice matte base. It's very creamy. It doesn't leave your skin feeling tight or looking dry, which I feel like some matte primers can. I have a few other matte primers in here. I just feel like I don't need to keep all of them. I'm just trying to cut this down a little bit. The Essence Poreless Partner Primer, again, very, very similar. I don't know that I've actually used this one really at all over the past year. So I definitely think I can declutter this one, pass it along to someone else. This one maybe feels slightly more hydrating on the skin compared to the other two that I just shared with you, but it does create like a very smooth base. I like it. I think it is a nice option. I don't need to keep all of them. I have two primers from Catrice. They have an entire line of primers. So on the left is the Perfector Poreless Blur Primer, and then on the right is the Mattifier Oil Control Primer. These are a little bit different, but I do feel like they give a similar effect. The Perfector kind of reminds me a little bit of Benefit's Professional. I haven't tried that for years, but like that is the type of primer I think of when I think of a pore filling primer. Anyway, I'm going to keep this one. This one is definitely oil controlling. It's very smoothing. I feel like this keeps my oily skin from getting too oily, especially in the summertime. They used to have it and then they like brought it back and made it better. It basically feels the exact same. I say basically because I think they made some changes to the ingredients, but I find that my skin feels the same when I use this. And I don't know if you can tell a difference on camera, but some of the other matte primers I was applying to my hand completely mattified the skin, whereas this one does mattify the skin and it does create a very smooth texture, but it doesn't, like the skin doesn't look dull. So that's why I really like that one. This one from Smashbox is very, very similar. I think I'm going to keep this one too. I tend to like these during the summer, and I feel like I've been using the gripping primers quite a bit, so I haven't been reaching for these as much, but it's nice to have them on hand. It's always good to have like a nice smoothing mattifying primer. Okay, so this is from Danessa Myricks. It is the Yummy Skin Water Powder Serum. I've talked about this so much on my channel, so I won't spend a ton of time on it, but it's something that I like to wear under primer if it's really hot outside, if my skin is going through a time period where it's extra oily. It's basically like a watery serum that just helps to keep the skin a little bit more matte. This is from NYX. It's their Blur Screen. I do love this product. It's like a sunscreen primer all in one. It's very glowy. It's a little bit thicker, so I do feel like it smooths my skin out even though it has a glowy finish. Sometimes products with a glowy finish can almost make your skin look a little bit more textured, and it's hard to say. Maybe you will feel like this makes your skin look a little bit more textured, but even though I have, I deal with breakouts and things like that, I still love like a good glowy base, especially with my sunscreen, because sometimes I don't even go in with makeup on top. So I am such a fan of this. I didn't like the Blur Skin Tint, but I do really, really like this product. And then I have this product from Mented. This is the Perfect Prime Primer Stick. I do like this product a lot, but I don't know. I have some other products that I feel like do or have a very similar effect. This is basically like a matte pore filling primer in stick form. It does work well. I just think the texture feels a little bit dry for what I typically like these days. And if I do want like a very matte smoothing primer, I tend to reach for a liquid version like this one from e.l.f. rather than this, which feels a little bit dry. So I think that's it. How many did I declutter? Okay, so these are all of the primers I'm decluttering. I'm getting rid of 11, which I feel like is pretty good. I didn't even think that I had like I knew I had more primers than I needed, but I didn't feel like my collection was quite getting out of hand. So I feel like this is a really good start for me. I can fit all of my primers in one section, although it is kind of overflowing. At the end, I'll put this container back and then kind of go through it and see what the full after looks like. Okay, before I move on to powders, I have a couple of products. I'm not planning on decluttering any of these, but I'll just go through them. This is from Milani. It's a newer launch. It's their Conceal and Perfect Sun-Kissed Liquid Bronzing Drops. And then I also have the bronzing drops from e.l.f. These are pretty different. The Milani formula is very light. It feels a little bit silkier and it's definitely more on the sheer side. So I think the Milani formula is great if you want to wear bronzing drops alone, or if you don't really want like a ton of pigment. The e.l.f. bronzing drops I think are a little bit more ideal to mix in with either moisturizer or foundation. Because they're pretty pigmented, I don't feel like mixing them together really dulls them down. Like the bronzer is still going to show through whatever product you mix them in with. Okay, those are some pretty intense swatches. I feel like that's the amount I would probably apply to my whole face. On the left is Milani, on the right is e.l.f. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell with the bronzer drop, but they really look a lot different when you mix them in with something or shear them out on the skin. But I think they're both nice options. They're just different. I do have a couple of glowy products. This is the Say Glowy Super Gel. This is such a gorgeous texture. It's very, very thin. Like it is a true gel. So I find that it wears really nicely under makeup. You can mix it in with products, But again, because it's a gel, sometimes like cream or liquid formulas can overpower it just a little bit. But because it is so lightweight, it's nice to layer under products because it doesn't add a lot of texture to the skin, but it does give you a lot of glow. And I just think it looks really nice, very natural. I have three products that are kind of similar: the e.l.f. Halo Glow Liquid Filter, the Catrice Soft Glam Filter Fluid, and then this mini from Tarte. This is the Shape Tape Glow Wand. So on the left is Tarte in the shade Alight. In the center is Catrice, and I lost the sticker on it, but I think it's in the second lightest shade. And then on the right is e.l.f. in shade 1. All of these products are very, very similar. I think Catrice is slightly more sheer than the other two, but in the end, if you're using it as a primer or you're mixing it in, I feel like you're going to get the exact same effect. I have Catrice and e.l.f. because I like to have a few options, whether I'm using them on, for me personally or recommending them in videos. The Tarte one is really, really nice, but I haven't reached for it since really trying e.l.f. and then also having Catrice. It's nice to have two options, but I don't know that I need the Tarte one. Okay, time to go through powders. So I do need to declutter a few of these because I used to have all of my powders in one section and then they migrated over and I have two sections. I'm not looking to like fully clear out a section, but I feel like I could get rid of at least half of it because I don't want it to overflow as we move into the rest of 2024 and then 2025. So right in the front, I have the CoverGirl Clean Fresh Pressed Powder. I have the shade 120 Fair. Honestly, this is a little bit light for me. Once I finish this up, I probably will repurchase it, but in a darker shade. I haven't been using it a lot during the summer because I feel like it is just slightly too light. This is a very matte, very lightweight pressed powder. So if you have extremely oily skin or you want a super matte touch-up powder, this one's a great option. Very similar to that is the Essence All About Matte Powder. The difference is this does not come in different shades. They're both pretty powdery powders, but the CoverGirl one feels a little bit thinner. And because it does have pigment to it, it doesn't look super powdery on the skin like this one can. This one I've heard does leave like a little bit of a white cast. Because my skin is on the lighter side, I personally haven't noticed that, but I have heard that from some of you, you've had that experience. So just something to note. I usually go through one of these every single summer because it is such a matte powder, so I'm going to keep this one too. This is from Bare Minerals. I am going to declutter this one. It's basically just, it's pretty similar to Essence. I just don't need to keep both of them. I feel like I kind of use them interchangeably. Bare Minerals is maybe slightly less mattifying, but I haven't reached for that one a ton over the last year. I'm trying to think what other matte powders I have. So I have two of these, the Urban Decay All-Nighters. I actually haven't used it yet this summer, which is surprising because we're not almost through summer, but we've had some really, really hot days. Are they both full? I don't know why I have two of them. I feel like I had two open last year and I just assumed I would go through them. I'm going to declutter one of them and then keep one of them. I don't need to keep two because it isn't really my go-to powder right now, but I probably should use that during like the rest of the summer because I don't touch it in the fall and winter. What else do I have? These are powder foundations, so I'll talk about those separately. This is from Catrice. It is the Prime and Fine Mattifying Powder. So I do really like this. Catrice actually just launched a new powder, which I do have. It's not in my drawer right now because I'm still in the process of testing it out. And honestly, I just forgot to put it in here. I love this one because I do find that it is a true translucent powder. It is mattifying, but it's also very, very smoothing. I think I repurchased this fairly recently. So I love to use this under the eyes pretty much all year long. So definitely hanging on to this one. And then this one is from Essence. It's the Brighten Up Banana Powder. I've actually been using this one under my eyes during the summertime. It is a little bit brightening, and I feel like it can sometimes be just a little bit too bright depending on what type of look I'm going for, but I do like that it has that yellow tone to it. I haven't always been a big fan of like a yellow under eye powder, but because this one is a little bit lighter, it's not as intense as some other banana powders I've seen or tried. I do feel like it brightens up the under eyes without being too over the top. So once I finish that up, I will probably move on to the Catrice powder before I repurchase either one of them. This is from Flower Beauty. It's the Light Illusion Perfecting Powder. I just realized my Charlotte Tilbury powder is not in here as well, which where is that? I actually haven't seen that in a little while. I do love that powder, but I repurchased this one and I've kind of gone back to using this. I feel like they are so similar. I go through that one a little bit more slowly because I feel like this Flower Beauty one is maybe not pressed as firmly, so it's easier to hit pan on it. But honestly, the textures are so close. Like this gives you a very smooth, very airbrushed finish, just like Charlotte Tilbury, and it is a lot less expensive. Okay, as for powder foundation, I have two favorite formulas. The Essence 16-Hour Cover and Last Powder Foundation. Why do I have three of these? I feel like that happened on accident. So I have 3 bright beige, 6 cashew, and then 7 natural suede. The thing about this powder is it doesn't really look that different in the pan. So on the left is natural suede, which is 7, and then on the right is cashew, which is 6. You can't really see a big difference. I don't know that you'll see a big difference on the skin between these two either. I think 6 looks a little bit darker than 7. I don't know if it actually is. I feel like they look almost identical. I'm going to keep 6 and declutter 7. And then this one is 3 bright beige, which I do think is a little bit light for me. That's why I tried to choose a different shade. My other favorite powder foundation formula is from e.l.f., the Camo Powder Foundation. I do like to have 2 of these because I do end up mixing these together. I haven't found a perfect shade in this, but I do love the formula. So I have light 210N and light 205N. I don't know. Now that I'm looking at 210N, I'm like, that's probably too dark. Maybe I had a tan last summer when I was using this. I think I'll just stick with 205N. Okay, so I feel pretty good about that. I was able to clear out like half the powders in this section, and then I am going to get rid of some loose powders as well. So this whole section is loose powder. I do have 2 of the One Size by Patrick Starr powders. I have translucent and then ultra pink. I want to be a pink under eye fan. Like, I think it looks so beautiful on other people. I love how the pink under eye just kind of melts seamlessly into the blush, but it never looks right on me. And I don't know if it's because I haven't found like my go-to pink powder. I just think pink under eye powder doesn't go really well with my undertone. Even though I can get away with like neutral leaning complexion products, my neck and my chest are very, very yellow. So whenever I apply like pink powder to my face, it just looks off unless it's an actual blush. I think I'm going to declutter this pink powder. I do love the One Size powder though. It's very, very nice. It locks your makeup into place so well. I kind of go back and forth between this and the Huda Beauty powder, which I just realized is not in here either. I don't know why I'm missing a few of my complexion products, but those are like my 2 go-tos when it comes to loose powder. At least high end, because this is one of my favorites as well, the e.l.f. Halo Glow. So again, I do have the light pink, and then I also just have light. This light pink is a little bit more doable for me because it is so subtle that on the skin, it doesn't really even fully look pink. It's just not as bright as the light powder. But that being said, I still don't think I need both. Like when it comes down to it, I usually always reach for light over the pink one. And the pink one's fine. It works really well. So it could be a great option if you don't want such a pigmented powder like the One Size powder. But I don't need both. I also don't need both of these. This is from Milani. It's their Conceal and Perfect Blur Out Powder. I love this formula so much. So initially they came out with this translucent shade, and then later on they came out with a banana shade. The translucent shade almost has like a peach tone to it, and the banana shade is pretty yellow toned. And I wish they would come out with more because I do feel like this is not like a true translucent. It ends up looking really dark on my skin tone, and I've heard the same thing from other people. So if you have a little bit of a deeper skin tone, this might actually work really, really well for you, or the banana shade if you want something a little bit brighter. The translucent ends up darkening my foundation a little bit too much. So I am going to declutter this one, but I'm going to keep the banana shade. I have this powder from Typology, which is really nice. It's a very lightweight, very natural powder. I feel like it slightly mattifies the skin without being too much. So I am going to keep this one. I like to use it with their skin tint. And then I have the Ami Colé powder. This one's in the shade Translucent. This is called the Skin Melt Loose Powder. I really think this is a beautiful option if a smooth finish is your main goal with powder. I think I broke the cap off of this. If you want longevity, like if you want your powder to lock your foundation into place, this isn't the most ideal formula because it is so lightweight, so smooth, so silky. I feel like it does give your skin like that gorgeous, smooth, blurred finish, but it doesn't necessarily make my foundation last longer. So it's a nice finishing powder, or it's a great option if you are someone who doesn't need your powder to actually lock your makeup into place. Like if you're already wearing a pretty long lasting foundation, or you're using a lighter coverage, lighter weight foundation, and you don't care if it lasts all day, then this is great because it is so light and so pretty. I do have the Haus Labs powder, the Bio Blurring Loose Setting Powder. This one's good. I don't have any complaints about it, but you know what? I haven't reached for it very much over the last 6 months at least, maybe even longer than that. I think it's like a good everyday powder. Again, not the longest lasting powder, not the most smoothing powder I have out of everything, but it's just like a good staple powder. And if I wasn't making an effort to actually kind of downsize a little bit, I might just keep it on hand. But as you can see, like I have enough powder in my collection to basically last a lifetime. So I am going to go ahead and declutter that one. Okay, this, I didn't even realize I still had this in my collection. It was like shoved in the back of my drawer, kind of like wedged behind the organizer. It's from Too Faced. It's the Peach Perfect powder. If you've been around my channel for a really long time, you might remember my obsession with this because I know so many of you had the same obsession. I loved this so much back in the day, but at this point, I do feel like I have other alternatives, so I think I can actually part with this, finally. I remember I was so upset when they discontinued it because I loved it so much and I really couldn't find another alternative for it. But thankfully, at this point, there are other alternatives in my collection. Okay, wow, I actually ended up getting rid of a lot more powder than I thought I would. I decluttered 10 different powders, which I thought maybe I would get rid of like 4 or 5, but that actually feels really good. I love powder, but the truth is it takes forever to finish up powder. So very rarely do I actually use up like an entire setting powder. So it's kind of nice to have a smaller, more condensed collection. And there's really nothing wrong with any of these formulas. They're all great, which is why I was hanging on to them. I just feel like I have other powders I either like better or the shade is just a little bit off. And then I kept 13. Oh no, I have a few more over here. So this is the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop powder. I've actually been using this one a lot lately. I feel like this is a really good summertime staple because it is very matte but very smoothing, and it has a little bit of coverage to it as well. So you can get it in different shades. I use the shade Light, and I feel like it works well if I'm using kind of like a lighter coverage product just to kind of even things out and kind of perfect the skin. I know I just said kind of like 4 times in a row there. This one is from ColourPop. It's the Pretty Fresh Pressed Face Powder. I have the shade Light 6, which again, very similar to NYX. It's mattifying, it's smoothing, it offers a little bit of coverage. I feel like I could kind of use them interchangeably, but since I did declutter quite a few, I'm going to keep that one as well. And then I have the LYS Beauty Translucent Setting Powder. This is a great option on days where I want to set cream products into place, but I still want the cream finish to kind of show through. This is very natural on the skin, but I do feel like it also keeps my makeup from moving around too much. I love using this under my eyes too because it is so lightweight, so it doesn't really enhance the look of fine lines, but it does lightly set my concealer into place. Okay, so let me move my matte primers and my smoothing primers back into this section, and then I'll see where I'm at. Okay, here's what everything looked like before I decluttered, and then here's what it looks like afterwards. I'm really happy with the progress I made. Honestly, now I can put all of my foundations and concealers back into this drawer as well, and just store all of my complexion products in one place. Both or all of my categories were getting a little bit too full, so I kind of had to separate them, and that was too much. Even though I film beauty videos, I really need to have a slightly more curated collection because otherwise it just gets too cluttery, and then I don't know what I have. I don't get to use all of the products, so I feel really good about this and I'm happy with it. So thanks for watching. If you guys want to check out my foundation declutter or my concealer declutter, I'll link those in the description box below. And again, I go through all of the products and share my reviews and my thoughts on the formulas, so I hope it's helpful. I haven't filmed any other declutter videos yet, so let me know which one you want to see next on my channel, and I'll see you very soon with a new one. Bye.